Hi, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be trying something a little bit different for me. I thought it'd be fun to attempt a display for one of the Speed Champions cars, as the channel has featured them so much and I have quite a few of them. The easiest idea for me to come up with was a rally stage for the Audi Quattro. If you have ideas for displays for the other cars, drop me a comment, but let's get going on this rally stage. So my wife picked up these deep sort of display frames, which are kind of cool. I've seen these before, but she managed to get these very cheap in a charity shop. And I'm going to go with this big one because the Audi is quite a big car. It's quite sort of square and chunky, so it looks a bit too big almost for that one. I think we'll be able to fit in a bit more into this one. But my idea is that the car will sit somewhere in the middle of the frame, or at least a little bit below the middle of the frame. Because if it's down here, then there's going to be a lot of space at the top here without much to put in it. So I think that the main focus needs to be on the car, and I'd quite like to have it suspended in mid-air so that it looks as though it's in the middle of a jump. I think that won't be interesting enough. I'd like to have it a bit angled towards us like this, and then the ground a centimetre or two below it there, just so that it fills out the frame well. And then underneath here we have the road, and then just behind the car I thought we'd have a row of spectators, and behind them we'll have sort of shrubbery and trees growing, and in the back corner, one of them, probably the back right corner, a little image of a sun, and maybe some clouds in the sky, sort of see what works up there. But those are kind of my initial thoughts to get going, and the sketch I have in my mind for the build. I'm going to begin by just creating a bit of a layer for the road here at the bottom. I'm going to first of all create a structure using parts in a colour that I have loads and loads of, but we're going to get the structural part for the base up first, and then I'm going to see kind of what looks best here. I'm just going to put a bit of plating over the top here just to lock my structure down, and I thought that it might be fun to have the base layer here in the brown, and then we can work up in gradients from there. Again, I'm just going to use colours that I don't have as much use for the back here, because you won't see these. I think what I'm going to need to go for is the dark tan followed by tan on top like this, as sort of 3 layers. It's going to look very unnatural if it's just 3 straight lines. So I'm going to break up these sections a little bit using plates instead. May add a little bit of detail here and there, just for a bit of interest below the surface. But the tan colour will be the sort of sand, I think, that the car will then be driving on. So this will be the top layer. To add a little bit more detail even to the brown at the bottom here. We need a bit more texture. So I've just created this section to replace all of the bricks along the bottom, and it's just to give a little bit more texture. So I've added in these dark grey pieces here to represent some rock, and then a couple of little stone pieces in there as well. So I'm just going to replace the bricks along the bottom with that. And now I think we're ready to start layering the sand or the tan pieces on top. This little cubby hole here, I was sort of thinking I might put a little insect into, but I'm leaving that open for the time being and see what I can come up with for that hole. So I am quite liking this. It may be that I want to add even more texture to this, but I'm going to keep going for now, and I'm going to start to build a bit of a gradient up here, because the road, I want the road to be downward sloping towards us so that the car can sit something like that. So I'm actually going to use pretty much just plates to layer a road that slopes up here, and then the spectators are going to stand at the top of that there. Now I'm sort of hoping that that's going to be enough of a slope, and I think it probably will be. It's going to sort of be that sort of angle. It may even be that I need a little bit more, although Yeah, something like that I think might be actually even better. So I think we're going to need one more layer here of bricks. Now I think something like that should be pretty good. So the angle will be like that. So the next step will be to plate over this entire area for the road. And I'm not going to worry too much about detail at this point. I'm just going to make sure that I get the main shape. So again, you may notice that I'm not lining this up perfectly with lots of straight lines. I want it to look as natural as possible, so I'm trying to break up a little bit where I place the plates in order to make it a bit more of a realistic landscape. But I can now move on to this middle section here. I think I'm relatively happy with this so far. I think I'm going to need to remove these back bricks though, because I want the road to I don't want the road to be too slanted. I don't think it would look totally realistic. So I'm going to remove these ones, plate out this last bit with some sand, and then place a couple of figures in the back here just to get an idea of spacing here. So I think I'm actually even going to remove that middle layer of plates. I think with that there, it just comes up too much. It looks like a flight of stairs. If you remove that and keep this kind of relatively flat here, then I think it's going to give a bit of a better look for the road. So I need to shift out these odd coloured plates out there and exchange those for tan ones. And then I think I'm going to be ready to put a couple of figures in just to get an idea. So I've added in a bit more plate work here just to give it a bit more of a natural look. I've raised the corner here a little bit, and I've added in a couple of extra colours, a couple of bits for stones. I may do some more depending on how things turn out. And then I've also layered up the back here with some slightly more natural colours than the yellow that I had there. And I've put in 3 placeholder figures just to get an idea. It's probably a good thing I did that, because when you put the car in here, then you can't really see them. So I need to decide here whether I'm okay with that or whether they need to be raised more. I think raising them a lot is going to look strange. So I think maybe the solution is to build up a bit more here and then have most of the figures in this corner and then have 1 or 2 down here. And then we can have some shrubbery in the middle here that then grows out over the top here. So that's probably what I'm going to go for. So I definitely think we're getting there. I'm going to raise a bit of the very back part of the build here, just in order to get the trees up a little bit, because if you put the trees directly here, they're not going to fill very much of the frame. I think they need to come up probably 3 bricks high before the trees really start to grow there. Might try with a couple of bricks high to start with and then see how we get on from there. I was actually going to wait a little bit with creating the backdrop, so the skyline, but I think I might actually do it now because it's then going to give me a good sense of where the greenery should be. So I'm going to build a layer of bricks behind here. This has just about space for 1 brick behind it. So I'm going to create a layer behind there, and because I don't have tons of blue bricks, I think it might look better anyway. I'm going to have quite a lot of green, dark green, and maybe even some black, dark grey behind here and lower here, just to give the illusion of sort of forest or woods behind there, and then a lot of blue at the top. Unfortunately, I don't have enough bright blue. I think it would look better with bright blue, so I'll just be going with the standard blue, which I think will be fine, but because it's a dark frame, it would look better with a light blue. But unfortunately, as I say, I don't have enough of that colour. So one or two challenges that I'm running into here. First of all is that it's going to be tight to get trees in here. It's definitely going to be tight. I also kind of wish that I'd planned this backdrop a bit more in advance, perhaps incorporated it into the main section of the build, but I was a little bit unclear about how I was going to do that. I don't use digital designers in order to plan my projects. I think it's more fun to sit with the bricks and overcome the challenges. So I'm going to carry on with building up the bricks at the back here, and I'm going to create a couple of little outposts where I can place shrubbery and trees, because I think it's going to be difficult to get all of them onto this row behind the figures here, and I really want to cover this area as much as I can. So I'm not going to be able to place them onto this back row. I'll have to place them onto here. So that's my challenge, is there's not a lot of studs here to place them. Maybe they'll need to extend this, but I was quite happy with the shaping of the rock here, so that's a bit of a pity. But I'm going to carry on, and maybe a case of dismantling a bit. So I think to speed this up a little bit, I'm going to need to clear down my working area and take this whole backdrop out. So I was thinking I might try and layer in some plates into the top here as clouds, and then I have an idea for the sun. Let's take this out, clear this up, and see how we get on with that. So let's now pop that in and see how this looks. Yeah, I would say we're definitely beginning to get somewhere with this. Needs a lot of bushes and shrubbery and trees coming out in between the foreground and the background though, because it is very blocky. So the next thing to work on is going to be the shrubbery and the trees. I've already created this little one by using one of those bendy bar pieces inside there, which allows you to bend and separate the cylindrical 1x1s a little bit. And then I've just attached these larger leaf shrubbery pieces going up the trunk, and a couple of little flowers just for a bit of colour pop. May add one or two more, but that's my first tree, which will just hang in slightly. I'll then be using a combination of these arch pieces, the large ones and the small ones, and my bin of mixed flowers and plants. So this is my progress so far. I actually removed it from the frame. It was a bit fiddly to get all the pieces in, so I'm going to continue with it from here. So as you may have noticed, I decided to move the shrubbery that's on the left here from the middle, because when I put the car in, you actually couldn't see that shrubbery, and I particularly liked the effect using these little parts that are fairly new and just placing them into a rounded stud and then hanging the leaves onto these. It creates a very random effect compared to how Lego usually looks like with the grid system. So I liked how all over the place it looked much more natural. Now I think we're almost there with this, but there's a bit of sort of minor detail still to be done on these little ledges here, and a few things on the wall here, or covering up the wall, the back wall here, I think is needed. So I'm going to spend a bit of time adding a bit of polish to the rock area here, adding a few little bits and bobs, just for extra detail to give it that detailed, natural look. I'm then going to move on to a stand to get the car at the correct angle. Now I think that this is done. So I can show you some of the final touches that I've added. I've added extra detail to the tree in the form of these little berries growing here. I've added a little bit of extra detail in the front, these little stones here. And if I remove the car, you can see that I've made a bit of a makeshift platform which angles down here, and then I've put an inverted slope underneath it. If you can see, in order to get the desired angle kind of fixed into place so it won't actually move down more than that. And then I've also added a little bit more detail in the form of a butterfly and a ladybird right at the back there, which is not really noticeable when the car is there, but it's a little bit of colour pop at least. And then I've added some minifigures. It was difficult to get 3 figures into this space in a way that looked natural. I wanted them to look animated and excited, so I kind of had to squeeze them in there a little bit, especially the lady at the back, but I think it adds a sense of excitement to the final build. I also adapted the exhaust pipe on the car just by using the cylindrical pieces rather than pieces from the original build, in order to just put a couple of these round 1x1s on there for a bit of smoke. And then I also did toy with the idea of putting in a figure in the back here. But in all honesty, once you put the car in place, it just looked strange to have somebody standing there. So I went with this as the final look for the build. Now all that's left really is to pop it into the frame. Well, my mock is up on the wall, and I guess that means it's the end of another video. This was a fun challenge because I always enjoy working with restrictions in Lego, and the frame gave me the perfect restriction in terms of the space that I had to build in. So I really recommend trying to find some sort of a box. It doesn't need to be as large or as small as this. It can be really good fun to use everyday objects to combine with Lego in order to make slightly more unique displays. If you've enjoyed the video, please drop a like as it really helps the channel to grow. Consider subscribing, and I hope to see you again. Bye for now.